lived as a ruthless businessman, and died as a philanthropist. The story of Andrew Carnegie. Andrew Carnegie was a Scottish-American industrialist and philanthropist whose net worth would still rank him third in the list of billionaires from the early modern to the modern period. He wrote the article Wealth in 1889, which was renamed as The Gospel of Wealth in 1900. In his article, he advocated that the rich and wealthy class should use their money to bring forth positive economic and social changes. His vision and life motto were put together in Andrew Carnegie's Dictums, which said, "To spend the first third on one's life getting all the education one can, to spend the next third making all the money one can, to spend the last third giving it all away for worthwhile causes." Since a man is not only known for his words and intentions, but also for his actions, let's take a deeper dive to see how fair was this Andrew Carnegie's journey in becoming the world's richest man while holding on to his values. Watch till the end to find out the secrets of Andrew Carnegie's success. Dictum 1. To spend the first third of one's life getting all the education one can. Andrew Carnegie was born on the 25th of November, 1835, in Dunfermline, Scotland, to William Carnegie and Margaret Morrison Carnegie. His father was a handloom weaver who would earn enough to get by. At the age of 13, Carnegie's father's business was crushed by the start of the Industrial Revolution. His mother would try her hands on different small jobs and offers to keep the family from starving to death. Carnegie did his earlier education at the Free School in Dunfermline. This school was gifted to the town by a philanthropist named Adam Rowland of Gask. Carnegie's maternal uncle, George Lauder Sr., who was a Scottish political leader, introduced him to the literary world. From the writings of Robert Burns to lore of historical Scottish heroes, Carnegie was highly impressed by them and based most of his ideologies and values from the lessons he learned. But unfortunately, his love for literature was cut short by demanding poverty. Things didn't seem to prosper for the family. They borrowed money from his uncle George Lauder Sr. to find a better life in the United States. They moved to Allegheny, Pennsylvania in 1848. Carnegie's first job and his experience with unjust labor laws and conditions. Andrew and his father received job offers from Anchor Cotton Mill and they started working there. Carnegie, at the age of 13, worked 12 hours a day and 6 days a week as a bobbin boy for a measly wage of $1.20 per week. While his father quit his job as a result of dissatisfaction with the working conditions in the mill, Carnegie was offered a promotion by the manufacturer of bobbins and offered him $2 per week. But with the promotion came worse working conditions at the boiler room. He wrote in his autobiography that working in this new position was more mentally and physically exhaustive for him. In 1849, on the recommendation of his uncle, Carnegie got a job as a telegraph messenger in the Pittsburgh office of the Ohio Telegraph Company, where he was offered $2.50 per week for his job. With his charm, eloquence, and attention to detail, he was able to make personal connections with important people in the field. Not only did he earn a good image, but he also used his sharp observation skills to learn the ropes in his job and beyond. After a few months or so, he became good at translating telegraph signals without using paper slip. This boosted his career graph, and soon he was made the operator in the company. Dictum 2. To spend the next third making all the money one can. In 1853, At the age of 18, he was employed as a secretary/telegraph operator by Thomas A. Scott of the Pennsylvania Railroad Company. His salary increased to $4 per week. Scott was an important figure in turning Carnegie's life around, and he remained a mentor and friend to Carnegie to the end. Carnegie was handed the position, the superintendent of the Western Division, in 1859 at the age of 24 by Scott. His salary rose to $1,500 per year. He then promptly employed his 16-year-old brother as his secretary and telegraph operator, and also his cousin, Maria Hogan, who became the first female telegraph operator in the country. Under the guidance of Scott, Carnegie learned about management, cost control, and how to run an ever-growing and blooming railroad business in America. To Carnegie's luck, Pennsylvania was one of the largest railroads, which almost monopolized the trade and the economy. Investment game. Carnegie's close relationship with Scott helped him to invest $500 in Atom Express in 1855. The payoff from investments was more of an inside game of corruption than a fair play. Scott and then Pennsylvania Railroad President John Edgar Thompson was part of this game. Because of such control over the investment game, Carnegie got an upper hand through the association with Scott. A few years later, Carnegie got shares in Theodore Tuttle Woodruff's sleeping car company as a payoff for shares that Scott and Thompson invested in Woodruff. This is the point where Carnegie started to build his wealth. He reinvested the money in railroad companies that dealt with iron, bridges, and rails. With his wealth multiplying tenfold, he started various businesses through his charm, money, and connections with Scott and Thompson, to whom he also gave a stake in his business ventures. With his association with Woodruff and inventor of sleeping cars, George Pullman, Carnegie made a merger for business travel at distances over 500 miles. Not only was it a successful merger for business, but it played a key role in the Civil War that happened in 1861 to 1865. Civil War. When the war commenced, Scott was given the role of Assistant Secretary of War. He was in charge of military transportation. Shortly after, he appointed Carnegie as superintendent of the military railways and the Union government's telegraph lines in the East. Carnegie played a key role in the success of the Union in the Civil War. His railroad transportation and telegraph services proved to be highly successful for the eventual victory for the Union. This war demonstrated how essential railroads and telegraphs were for success. And all of these things were under the subtle control of Andrew Carnegie. Formation of Keystone Bridge. Right after the war ended, he left railroads to join ironworks. He had his investments in iron, bridges, and rails already, which gave him the advantage to branch out his control over other key industries such as steel. Pittsburgh became central for wartime production, and Carnegie had a major hand of control over it as well. He established steel rolling mills that doubled his fortune. With the help of Scott and Thompson, he established his major company in 1865, Keystone Bridge Company. They also helped him in acquiring contracts for iron production for railroads as well as bridges. The possibility of money was becoming endless. The contacts in his list were blooming with all top and influential people. He was a charming speaker and influential at a social gathering as well. He championed the rights of the working class and how rich and wealthy people should invest their money for social causes and upliftment of the poor. In his personal memo, he passionately wrote against hoarding all the money and made parallels on how it is equivalent to idol worshiping. he also expressed his desire to retire by the age of 35, as he has enough money to get by. By his calculation, $50,000 should be the maximum limit of money one should have. Rest should be given to social causes. These sounded very profound, generous, and even wise to poor and wealthy alike. But what was happening behind the scenes of his flowery words and lofty ideals? Clashes with beliefs. As history has it that businesses, especially capitalistic ones, are built on blood, sweat, and tears, often of the laborers and not of the owners. Was Carnegie going to take a different approach to make his financial ideals a reality? With the establishment of his many enterprises, and especially Keystone Bridge Company, he employed many laborers. These laborers were subjected to the same harsh working conditions and contracts that Carnegie and his father endured in the early days. The contractors were working for 364 days a year, with only the 4th of July as a day of rest. Just when Carnegie started becoming the largest manufacturer of pig irons, steel rails, and coke in the world, one of the most serious and bloody labor confrontations in the history of the U.S. happened: the Homestead Strike. Homestead Strike. Carnegie bought the rival Homestead Steelworks in 1883. This included an extensive plant alongside coal and iron fields, a 684-kilometer-long railway, and a line of lake steamships. He had established various steel mills under various names. Finally, he formed Carnegie Steel Company by combining his and his associates' assets on the 1st of July, 1892. At one point where Carnegie was soaring new heights, Carnegie's physically and mentally exhausted labor, who were working under harsh working conditions, finally boiled up to the point of anarchy. Carnegie became the very thing that he swore to abolish. Since the ambition of the company was reaching a high global value, compromising personal values seemed to be the only way for Carnegie. To manage his image in the public, he appointed Henry Clay Frick as a mediator between the Union of Laborers and Carnegie Steel. Frick acted as the face of oppressive execution for the company's ruthless goals. Carnegie toured in Scotland and other places to flee the heat coming from the laborers' union. Frick was left to handle the situation his way. In the public front, Carnegie supported the formation of unions, but he also formally approved of the tactics played by Frick to dissolve the union with strikebreakers as well. Amalgamation Association of Iron and Steel Workers, AA, put forward the demand to increase wages and for better working conditions. Frick had anti-union sentiments and didn't budge. Instead, in retaliation, he proposed an additional 22% average wage decrease. The union and company couldn't come to an agreement. Carnegie was absent from the scene throughout. The management locked out the union. Union workers concluded that this unfair treatment calls for a strike. The strike formally commenced on the 1st of July, 1892. Frick safeguarded the plant with barbed wires, water cannons, armed protection, etc. The union would now not only demand better wages and working conditions, but wouldn't allow any non-union men to work in the steel plant. Frick wasn't able to employ men from outside of the union, so he took a bloody way out. On the 6th of July, 1892, Frick brought in thousands of strikebreakers to work in the steel mills along with Pinkerton agents to protect them from union men. Both Pinkerton agents and the union men were armed. It is still not sure who fired first, but the feud ended with one Pinkerton agent and 9 union workers dead and hundreds injured. At the end of it all, for Carnegie, Steel, and Frick, they were able to employ non-union immigrant workers for even slashed wages and worse working conditions. Carnegie came back to the United States with visibly no blood on his hand, but its event heavily damaged his reputation. His career ambitions were now literally founded on the blood of workers. Yet, his company managed to mint more fortune after this event. Did these events sit heavy on the values of Carnegie? Dictum 3. To spend the last third giving it all away for worthwhile causes. U.S. Steel and philanthropist activities. In 1901, Carnegie was preparing for his retirement at the age of 66. John Pierpont Morgan, J.P. Morgan, a banker and a significant American financial dealmaker, saw potential in taking over Carnegie Steel. This negotiation concluded by the 2nd of March, 1901, at $300 million, making Carnegie the richest man in his time. Carnegie then actively started taking part in philanthropic activities. He funded and built many libraries, educational institutions, and donated money to charities that he trusted. He also preached on his ideas on how wealthy people should give the surplus amount of their wealth to social causes, just as he used to say before. But this time, in his last 18 years of life after retiring, he gave away 90% of his wealth to social causes. Conclusion: Carnegie's all-it-takes attitude toward success. Andrew Carnegie rose from the same poverty that he inflicted on his workers by his shrewd ways of attaining success. On observing his journey, you'll find that the following key points made him the richest man in the world. Carnegie relentlessly tried to adapt, overcome, and improvise on his struggles by having a learning mindset. He never skipped an opportunity to learn more about his work, on cultures, and on different subjects throughout his life. He made his social connections work for his advantage. He knew the importance of maintaining a good image in the public, and by fostering these connections through acts of quid pro quo, tact, and charm. He had an end goal in his mind and worked round the clock to make it into reality. He used all means possible to reach closer to his success. He was an opportunist who knew how to make profits even in adverse situations, be it during the Civil War or bringing immigrant workers to his mills. End note. Some say it was a way to whitewash his image. Some say it was his way to atone for the unjust ways he used to gain filthy success. But how true was he to his values? He did follow his dictums, but at what price? If you were planting new saplings after causing massive deforestation, would you be considered a good person for planting saplings, or a bad person for causing massive deforestation? The bad things aren't reversible, but the good things aren't any less impactful. Was it a good path to success or bad? You decide. Don't forget to leave a comment on your take about Andrew Carnegie's road to success. Hit like if you enjoyed our video, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.